The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.
Started his political career in the home of an unrepentant terrorist. 9/11 changed your life, it changed mine too.
Right.
That he hung out with Reverend Wright, who said, GD America, and 9/11 was America's chickens coming home to roost. And I listened to your brother, and he still says officially that Fort Hood is workplace violence when it was radical Islamic terrorists that killed those people at Fort Hood. He has a reluctance to say a war on terrorism. I'm trying to put together the guy and how he grew up, the people he's associated with, how it shaped him,
right,
and how it's impacting his decision-making today.
That's a good point. Well, I think I can't speak for my brother. I can speak for myself. I can say, though, that when it comes to politics, I try to stay as far away as possible. But when it comes to family, it's something which I think we can't leave that behind. Now, part of it is that, as Barack was growing up, I think he was always looking for father figures or people, for example, whom he could admire. We all do, don't we?
Frank Marshall Davis, maybe?
Well, in your life, you meet many, many people.
Sure.
And also, you don't really know that much about these people, even though you think you do. I'm sure there have been maybe experiences in your life. And in my life, I know that there have been experiences where I've met people, and then I've found out, hey, this person thinks this about this. And if I had known that earlier, I probably would have had nothing to do with them. Mm-hmm. But the thing is that when in Barack's situation and in my situation, what's difficult is that you try to form an identity, you try to become somebody, but you don't really have any role models to look out for. So you have to get all these bits and pieces, and somehow you take the bits and pieces and you form your identity. And in my case, it took a long, long time. I think Barack's book, for example, Dreams from My Father, was a way in which he was trying to resolve that. Now, whether he did that or succeeded is his own story. But I know that...
it's interesting because both of your books, and I've read them both.
You have read both of them?
Oh, yeah.
Wow. Goodness.
Deal a lot with race issues. So let me give you cut 9 here.
Sure.
And 9 and 10, and we'll put them together.
Right.
A lot about race in your book.
Yes.
And a lot about race in his book.
Yes.
And both of you are biracial.
Yes.
Let me play it.
For many white people of my grandfather's generation and background, the instincts ran in an opposite direction, the direction of the mob. It was obvious that certain whites could be exempted from the general category of our distrust.
What do you, and white folks' greed runs a world in need. We'll play that later. But, these are really provocative racial statements. Why do you think, where does that come from? Because you discuss a lot about this and the difficulty of growing up in what you describe as two communities in a way.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to explain that, actually, because that's something which really is up to Barack, and I'm sure that he has an answer for it.
What's your contact with him now? You won't talk. Do you talk to him a lot? Do you email with him? He has a BlackBerry.
Going forward, I've decided not, out of respect for his feelings and privacy, I'm not going to be commenting on that. But I will say that we've been on and off. We've met a number of times over the years, but each experience has been pretty intense. The most intense ones were pretty much the first one, and also in Beijing. But we had a great meeting also in Austin right before the
When's the last time you've
Clinton
seen him?
debate. Actually, the last time, Sean, was during the second inauguration.
Who's George Obama in this family tree? George was the one in the hut.
Yep. Well,
in Kenya.
To a rich country like America, you don't understand.
I've seen the pictures of it. It was pretty bad.
Oh, well, I don't know that much about where he was living.
You know what?
George is my youngest brother.
Okay, because I looked at that and what looked like squalor to me and poverty, and I'm like, for the guy that says, we're supposed to be our brother's keeper, I offered to send the guy $1,000 because I felt he needed it. I'm like, why doesn't Barack help this guy?
It's a good point, because one thing that I think that happens, and I've been a little disappointed with Barack, is the issue about family. I felt that sometimes politics has played a bigger role than family. And from my personal experience, the situation when he said that he met me for the first time about 2 or 3 years ago, I mentioned that in the book in the first part, and I've never really had an answer to that particular question.
Yeah. All right, we're going to take a break. We'll come back a lot more. We have in studio Mark Obama DeSandro. He has a brand new book. It's The President's Brother and Obama's Journey, My Odyssey of Self-Discovery Across Three Cultures. We'll take a break. We'll come back.
The Sean Hannity Show.
I don't know him well. I met him for the first time a couple of years ago. He stopped by with his wife for about 5 minutes during the trip. I haven't read the book, but it's no secret that my father was a troubled person.
All right, that was President Obama talking about his brother, Mark Obama, and his full name is DeSandro, and he has now written a brand new book, An Obama's Journey, My Odyssey of Self-Discovery Across Three Cultures, and he joins us in studio. I never thought I'd meet an Obama in person. Your brother's not the biggest fan of mine.
Yeah, well, I raised some eyebrows when people I knew when I told people I knew that I was actually coming here, Sean. But
and what'd they say?
Oh, that's you and I have got to have a long talk about that, but we'll work something out.
One of the things is it must be surprising to you that your brother's the president of the United States. Did that surprise you?
No.
Why?
No, it doesn't. And because I think everyone in our family, we've always had very high expectations of each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I know Barack is very ambitious. People think of it as arrogance sometimes, but he is ambitious and he has high expectations. I think one thing is we have lots of similarities. One of them is trying to make a difference. For example, I work with kids and I work on domestic violence issues, and I know that he's achieving a lot of those dreams of our father who influenced us a great deal. And I write about this in the book.
Let's talk about your relationship with him. As he said in that clip, you had only met when, and explain the lineage, if you will.
Sure. Well, the first time we met was actually 1988, and it was a total surprise. For a long time, because of the domestic violence in our family, which is about 7-8 years, which I experienced, I wanted nothing to do with the Obama name. I refused to take Obama as my name. It was Mark DeSandro.
Because of your father?
Because of my father, Barack Obama Sr. The story starts actually 50 years ago, when Barack Obama Sr. went to the University of Hawaii and he met Stanley Ann Dunham, the president's mother. And they fell in love. Barack was conceived shortly afterwards. Then he went to Harvard after they divorced, met my mother, also white, American, Jewish, and they fell in love. And later that year, they were married in Kenya, and I was conceived shortly after that. We have lots of differences, but lots of similarities.
In that sense. So you've known growing up that you had a brother, but...
There were rumors.
There were rumors.
There were like rumors going all over the place, but it sounds strange, but the thing is that... I shut out a lot of this after the divorce. My mother divorced Barack Obama Sr., who was a brilliant man, but troubled and I would say tortured in some ways. And I tried to shut out everything that had to do with him. Mm-hmm. And for many, many years, until Barack actually walked in that door unannounced in 1988 in a balmy summer, I had pretty much forgotten everything.
Explain that.
Well, explain what?
Explain when you met.
Sure.
And how old were you then?
I was in my late teens.
Was he a state senator then, or no?
No.
It was prior to all that.
Good question, Sean. Yeah. Basically, Barack was on his way to Harvard. He was going to Harvard Law School, and I was on my way to Stanford. I just graduated from Brown University. Mm-hmm. And I was sitting in my room and one day, back from vacation. I was from Brown, just graduated from Brown, and in my parents' home in Nairobi, Kenya, and I heard the sound of the gravel on the outside. A car was coming in, and some voices. I was reading a book, The Devil Drives by Fawn Brodie, an amazing book about East Africa culture and colonialism, and my mother walks in the door, and she's like half coming in, half coming out. She's trembling a little bit. She says to me, "Mark, your brother from America is here." And I said, "What brother?
What brother from America?" Yeah.
And
so he knew about you.
He knew about me.
Yeah.
And I think he was trying to find out, as we all do at some point in our lives, about our background and about our history. And he had come to Kenya to discover more about his African side. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I said, "Who?" And she said, "Barack, your brother from America." And I said, "I don't want to meet him," because all these thoughts were coming through my mind.
It was a tough upbringing.
It was tough.
Yeah.
It was a tough upbringing, and also it was very intense. But I walked into the living room, and there was this big gangly guy who looks exactly like me, these big knees and these arms.
You do look alike.
Well, he looks like me.
Exactly. No, but there is a resemblance.
There is. There
Yeah,
is.
and I'm
Yes.
sure many people have told you that.
Well, we're the only two mixed race kids in the Obama family, and we have
Yeah.
lots of similarities, but lots of differences.
So how did it go that first meeting? I mean, because you really didn't keep contact afterwards. Was that more your doing, his doing?
No, we kept contact, but it was afterwards. But it was on and off. And I would say the thing is that that first meeting was awkward because
Understandably so.
it was awkward because at a moment we were forced to confront reality when it came to my father. That was one big piece. Barack admired him, and I hated him at that time because of what he did to my mother. But Barack also wanted to know more about Kenyan culture, and I was a Kenyan. I'm an American, actually. I'm American, but I was at that time very eager to go back to learn more about the West. I love Chopin, Beethoven. I play piano. I've been a musician all my life, and Western culture. And so I felt in some ways that he was ashamed of me because of my whiteness, and I felt that maybe he was a little bit ashamed of his blackness. But it was in terms of culture.
I mean, if you have the same background, if you both have a black father and a white mother, how could he be? How can you characterize that? Because you're describing him.
Yes, that's a good point. And I guess one of the things is that mixed race kids have a very different take in terms of how of going through life. They often have two or three cultures that they have to deal with and identify at one point. When I was growing up, because of my father's problems with my father, I tended to identify with my mother. And I think Barack,
Because of the abusiveness of your father.
well, because of his really troubled issues, and that pushed me away. Barack, I think, on the other hand, probably had to deal with the absence of a father, which does affect children.
Of course.
I mean, he had also, and you're Irish, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so, I think there were lots of similarities between us, but there were lots of differences. For example, I'm sure your and his Irish grandmother couldn't say Oiveasmir like mine, right?
In this PC world that we're living in, Mark, you're not allowed to say these things. There's no distinctions, but that's very funny. I'm fascinated by this only because I feel I got a very good read on your brother early on, in terms of his ideology and his unpreparedness for the job. I think he has done a very poor job as president, and we're not here to really debate policy. I have obviously philosophical, political differences with him, but more importantly, I felt that America got caught up in the cult of personality of your brother. It was almost like people were in a hypnotic trance. He's very good at reading teleprompter. He's very good on the stump. I feel when it comes to governing, if you look at his background as associations, I read him as a rigid ideologue, and I've never seen an example or can cite you an example where he has deviated away from that ideology. And I think it's unfortunate because I think the country's suffering as a result of it. But I'm interested in knowing more because I think I had read him well. He's the president of the United States, and America right now needs a leader, and I don't feel he's leading. With that said, I mean, what is it like? For example, so after you had this first meeting in '88, I know you met with your brother. You talk about this in the book in Beijing, and it was. Explain that meeting before I guess it was during inauguration week you met him again?
Yeah, the meeting that we
Or he
had,
promised that he'd meet you in Beijing.
Yeah, Barack he's very inspiring. And one thing which you mentioned, I just be sure to me, I know we have differences of opinion about him, but one thing which I think we should give him credit for is that in many ways he inspires a lot of people. And that's a talent which
I can't dispute that. Right. I mean, I think he literally captivated a nation.
Right. And the thing is that inspiration is something which is very, very important for a lot of people who are behind and who have had a lot of problems. At the time, there was a very special feeling in the air at that the first inauguration. And he's my brother. I care about him. But I do know that none of us are perfect.
I'm not perfect?
Well, we're going to talk about that too, Sean.
No, I'm not.
But
all have sinned and fallen short, Mark.
Yeah. Well, I think you're right. But wait, one of the things is that getting back to that meeting in Beijing, in my book I write, Barack. Actually, no, the inauguration. I said to him, "Would love to have you over for dinner in Shenzhen," and he said, "I would love to be there, but they won't let me." And I think he was referring to like security or his handlers and stuff like that. But I will meet you guys when I come to China. And we had a wonderfully in a very intense meeting in Beijing in 2010. And the book talks about that. It was a meeting also which had some issues because, at the time I had released my book, my first book.
Right.
From Nairobi to Shenzhen, which exposed a lot of the issues that a lot of people, not just in my family, but around the world, don't talk about.
Like?
Domestic violence, for example. We see that in the Ray Rice issue now.
You were talking a little bit about that. You said you write in a book years ago when I was writing a particularly difficult passage about our father. I had burst into tears, and my wife stared in astonishment at the sight of a grown man overcome with emotion. My family will hate me for this book, I explained, and she hugged and assured me they would not. How does your brother react to you coming on this show or being out publicly? I bet he doesn't like it.
Well, I'll tell you what. Do you have brothers?
I have 3 sisters, older.
Three sisters, great.
Yeah, I was the baby. And by the way, and I grew up in a 50 by 100 lot and 1 bathroom, and it really sucked.
Oh, we got to work on that. Well, I bet the bathroom's pretty good right now, right?
I got a couple. I tried to get one for every person. Yeah. So I want my own.
Okay. That's why. Okay. Good.
Yeah. But you had a tough upbringing. I mean, your father beat you, was physically abusive towards your mother.
Yes.
And I mean, your father drank.
Yes.
All of which you put in your book, by the way.
Yes.
And
but getting back to your question about, what happened with my wife, the issue is that, writing a book is, and you've written a number of books yourself, I'm sure. I know you have, is that it's like pulling teeth.
Hard.
It's hard because you have to be honest. And I'm a musician. I'm a pianist. When I play piano, I know that I will not connect unless I feel the music. Sure. It's part of me. And when I was writing this book, ironically, it was Barack who made me write this book.
Why?
Why do I say that? Because during the campaign, the first campaign, I was concerned that a lot of people would find out about his brother in China with all the connotations of that and accuse him of being maybe communist or perhaps not being truly American. And I told him this to his face, and he said to me, "Mark, you follow your own path. Don't worry about me. It's not going to influence the election, and I will always support you."
That's the thing to say.
It was.
Supportive.
Yes. But the thing is that when that happened, a lot of things, everywhere I was looking around, I was seeing Barack, as I write in the book. And it was overwhelming because a lot of these emotions that I tried to get rid of for such a long time, 30, 40 years, imagine that, Sean, were all bubbling up. And one day, and I just felt I had to write. I've always been expressing myself. And my wife, in a particularly difficult chapter, which talked about domestic violence, supported me. And she said, "Mark, not only do you have got to write, you've got to go and meet your brother."
Mm-hmm. You talk a lot about race, and I was a little puzzled by it. Maybe you can edify a little bit here.
Sure.
You're right. I looked at Barack. His skin was paler than mine, and yet he seemed so African.
Yeah.
I knew he thought I was black on the outside, but white on the inside.
Right.
The way he walked. Yeah. And you said, I'm using your words here, with a slight shaft bounce.
Right.
You have to be a certain age to know what that means. The way he talked, as though he were trying to purge the middle Americanisms in his accent, the clothes that he wore, this was, and you go on and talk about that.
Yes.
And then you said on his first meeting that with him,
but it also said that I was also a little I was arrogant, and also I was a person who was fascinated by the Western side too. But that's a good point. Yes.
On your first meeting with Barack Obama Jr. in Kenya, he doesn't like white people. I thought at first.
Yes.
You write that about your brother?
Yes. At the time.
I'll tell you what. Hold that thought.
I thought
we got to take a break. I want to also want to talk a little bit about your brother, what you think of his background, what shaped him, because I have my own theories, which I'm trying to keep in check because I want to learn from you a little bit more about him and try and
I'll learn from you too.
I can't wait to take this interview to the White House. 800-941-SEAN is our toll-free telephone number if you want to be a part of the program. We'll come back, and by the way, we're joined by Mark Obama. His last name, by the way, which he does in fact use, is DeSandro, and it's an Obama's Journey, my odyssey of self-discovery across 3 cultures.
The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.